The biggest piece of advice that I've received in my videography journey, my filmmaking journey, was just 3 words. And it was told to me by a new friend, but a very experienced videographer, photographer, content creator. And it was these 3 words. What's the context? And it was asked in a question. I recently wrapped up editing a short film of mine, and I sort of wanted to, before I wrapped up, I wanted to get, alternate perspectives, different eyes on your projects, because I think that's very important to get, a different set of eyes from someone experienced in your industry. I wanted him to sit down and be like, hey, can you just analyze this scene for me real quick? Just put the headphones on, walk out, and come back in. So he watched it, and then I came back in. I said, what'd you think? I was so excited for him to say, oh, I totally understand the film, the messaging. I get why you showed the picture at the beginning, because the picture at the end was actually from the kid, because I have this whole story. That'll be a whole nother video of the actual story of this short film, but I wanted to just sort of brush over this context thing. So essentially, I was expecting him to be like, wow, you nailed it. I totally understood it. Because I'm over here knowing everything about the film in my head, right? He knows nothing about the film. So I'm just expecting him to be like, wow, that was awesome. You did a great job. But he was constantly asking me, what's the context of this? What's the context of this shot? What's the context of putting this object here before this sequence? What's the context of the music cueing in at this point? And it made me think, I need to start editing in that lens as if I am the viewer and I know nothing about the story, and I need to give context to the actual shots that I'm making, the editing decisions that I'm making, because we often get wrapped up in this mindset of, I when you're editing, you totally understand the vision. You know what you want to do, so you execute it almost less prevalently, because you know all of the things you're supposed to know about the film, because you're the director or you're the writer. You're so intimate with the story. But if you're not executing it the right way, you're not giving people context to what the shots are, what the film messaging is, it's going to fall apart real quick. So let's start with a quote. It is not where you take things from, it is where you take them to, by Jean-Luc Godard. So I think that's very important, right? We oftentimes we go on shoots, whether it's short film shoots, client shoots, and we're like, wow, that was a great shot, or you just try to get all these beauty shots, and you can make something great, right? You go on a client shoot, you go on a short film shoot, and you could make some great cinematography. You can come home with some awesome shots, and let's say you put some little piece together, and it looks beautiful, but you watch it and you're like, something feels off. It feels out of place almost. And it's sure, you might have beautiful shots, but if they don't make sense together in a sequence, what's the point, right? We see this a lot in the short form content and those fast cut reels, social media, where it's just beauty shot after beauty shot after beauty shot with a cool music track, and it goes with the beat. And sure, that's cool and it's visually pleasing, but there's no substance to it. There's no heart. If you told a Reels editor or someone who specializes in social media, cutting up your little Reels, to make a long-form documentary or video, they wouldn't be able to do it. And that's fine, because that's not what they're specialized in. But I'm just trying to say that they're 2 different ballparks. It's almost like invisible glue, gluing all these shots together. It doesn't, it feels right, but it doesn't. Sometimes I've had to sacrifice, pleasing and cinematic shots that I've shot, whether it's on client shoots or short film shoots, because it just doesn't make sense to the story. And story is paramount, guys. So I used to shoot a lot of car content, short form social media car content, back when I was starting out with video, really. I was kind of tailoring my reels and TikToks vertically and all these things. But I shot a lot of short form content, but it just didn't tell a story. And the viewer just sees it and okay, and moves on, right? There's no heart to it. This past year, I've worked on a lot more long-form content pieces, whether it's short films for YouTube, whether it's documentaries for clients, whether it's client projects that are long-form for websites. You start to look at things differently when you shoot, especially, because you're not thinking, okay, what's the most beautiful shot? No, you're thinking, what shot best serves the client, best serves the story. You have to be more deliberate in a sense. It's much harder to create a thematically consistent and well-paced video than you think, because especially when it's over like 20 minutes long, the video. So it takes a level of looking at the project overall differently and applying a different mindset. But this mindset shouldn't just be applied when you edit, but also when you shoot projects. You want to save your ass almost when you edit. When you go on a shoot, you want to be like, okay, how can I save my ass in the back end? Because I know I'm going to be editing this project, or even if you're not editing the project, save the editor's ass. Get shots that actually make sense to the story. Let's say you're doing a documentary shoot for a specific day or a very key moment in the documentary. Well, you should be going into that shoot with a level of knowledge about the people involved, what the story is, what the vibe is. And then you can craft your shots and sequences based off of those vibes, because everything needs to be thematically consistent with the messaging, or else it's just a bland video. There's no tone to it. There's no piece to it. There's no vibe piece to it. Now I think about B-roll so much differently, because I'm thinking, how does this best serve the story? What is this item? What does it mean? How can it serve the audience? So I grab like tight, medium, wide, tight, medium, wide, tight, medium, wide of certain things, because I don't know what I'm going to use in the edit. So let's say you don't know what you're going to use in the back end. Okay, just grab a tight, medium, wide of, let's say it's a plant, or let's say it's a car. You want to grab tight, medium, wides because you never know in the edit, because you'll surprise yourself oftentimes when you edit these long form pieces. You're like, wow, I'm so glad I got that wide shot instead of the tight shot. It works so much better in the story. So I think also leaving yourself options, leaving yourself contextual options, not shooting everything the same, can also help you on the back end, because then you have 3 shots instead of 1 to pick from. And this is not to say to overshoot everything, but it will help you. And it's helped me more times than it hasn't helped. So I think to fix sort of this whole like aimlessly shooting mindset, I think you got to first start and ask yourself, what is the project I'm shooting? What is the story? Familiarize yourself, almost like I like to say, marry yourself to the story, marry yourself to the project, understand it in its entirety. Once you become more familiar with the project, everything kind of falls into place, because you're looking through the barrel of the project, and you're in that. It's almost like method acting, but for the people behind the camera. Then you can frame the shots, you can frame the compositions, you can do color grading to best serve the story. Everything falls in line because you've added enough context even to your mind. That way, when you put out shots and content and edits, they all fall in line. They're all thematically consistent. And it's funny because midway through this documentary that I'm editing a documentary right now for these 2 guys that opened up a comic book shop. Midway through, it was like the 4th shoot I did for them, and I'm editing it, and I forget what I shoot. This is like over a year's worth of footage. So I'm looking back, and the first like 3 shoots, I'm like, damn, I did not grab enough B-roll. This is falling apart. But then I go to the 4th shoot, and I guess at some point back in October when I went to that shoot, I grabbed so much more B-roll. My shots were better. My compositions were better. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I watched a video or something, but I know now the value of like feeling that as an editor of like, oh my God, there's no B-roll. These shots are horrible. And then that relief of like, okay, I think I'm good from this point on, because the B-roll got a lot better, but I felt that editing sort of anxiety of like, this just is not enough footage. So it's important to grab enough footage and the right footage at that, so that when you're editing, you're not like in a trance, like, oh my God, this is falling apart. I don't have enough footage. The problem was I used to mindlessly point and shoot. I just kind of shot from like an informational standpoint, not from a messaging standpoint, where I was just like, okay, let me grab like shots of this, shots of that, and that's it. I got everything. Now I started shooting based off of character dynamics, framing the characters. It was 2 guys, so I framed them in different ways, that best served who they are. So like one was much more talkative than the other. The other was more introverted. So I framed out my shots to actually exemplify that, to highlight that, and emphasize that. Like there was a shot where the introverted business owner, so I had a shot of the introverted guy working on the laptop behind the desk where the comics are, and the extroverted one on the front of the desk talking to a customer. And I framed it as such so you could see both in the shot. And now you're stacking the frame with two people, and they're being portrayed in different aspects. You're seeing, okay, what message is this? What message is this telling the audience? It's that, oh, look at this guy behind the counter on this laptop, and then look at this guy in front of the counter talking to the customer. And it actually without saying anything, it tells you a message of this guy's extroverted, this guy's introverted. So I think it's so important to have footage that best serves the story, and then everything falls into place, and you don't come out of the edit and just realize, oh shit, this is just a video. And that's not what we want. We don't want to make videos. We want to make stories. Even the way you position a clip in a timeline can change what the message is. I found that so important. You have a B-roll clip that you shot with a certain message in mind, right? Let's say it's that message of him talking in front of the counter, and then him behind the counter and showing the extrovert introvert. But where I put that clip in the timeline will also change what the messaging is. What followed the clip in the edit? What comes after the clip in the edit, and what comes before the clip in the edit? What talking points, what B-roll, what events also add context to the story. So then you have to worry about a longer chain of events too when you're editing like a long form documentary or a long form video. Like, how does this all play in a sequence? So oftentimes I have to put the shot, I'll insert the shot in, and that specific moment from the documentary or video seems right, but I'm like, no, I got to watch it from start to finish, or from a couple minutes back to now, to actually see if this contextually makes sense. So there's so many layers to being mindful of context in both editing and shooting, because you can change the context in either stages. When you edit, you can change the context of everything based on where you put it, based on where it is in the sequence, but then also you can change how you shoot to then affect the edit. So there's so many ways back and forth that you can do. But once you start familiarizing yourself and realizing and start shooting and editing within the context of what you're doing, what the story is, what the project is, you often get better results, guys. This is just the case. The clients really feel a story rather than a video. And if the shoot isn't about a story, and I get there are shoots that aren't about stories, it's just getting stuff done, we got to realize like everything is storytelling, whether we realize it or not. Because, you could take, right, a product, a brand, a car even. You could tell a story through that. There's a story behind that product. Everything through marketing is storytelling. You watch a commercial, you're watching a story. You watch a product video, you're watching a story. So there's always ways to provide context and create a string of story within anything that you do as a filmmaker. You got to edit as if you've never seen the video before, guys. This is what I said at the beginning. You want story, not a bunch of buzz and like cinematic highs that you're injecting into the audience. Sure, that's cool, and sure, you might feel like a sense of fulfillment from those shots, but it's not really like, there's no substance. Like, what is it? It feels weightless. It's like a weightless paperweight. So, guys, context is so important. The next time you approach a project, just ask yourself, what's the context? And I'm telling you, you'll start to think differently, and your project can completely transform.